Oh, no, yeah.
All right, hi everyone, welcome to the June 2024 meeting of the Conservation Commission. The first thing on the agenda is approval minutes, which we do not have for May's meeting. We'll have those at July's meeting to look at. The next thing on the agenda is the wetland conditional use permit application for business for 50 Andrew Jarvis Drive. There's someone here to speak to that. You can sit or stand. However you want.
Hi there, afternoon. I apologize for the last minute talking with Peter. I had the wrong date at my calendar. He's like, oh, I'm like, tomorrow. It's like, no, it's last week. I really apologize. I'm not the one who missed meetings. As we discussed during our walkthrough a month ago, we're just proposing to take an existing grass surface, remove the soil to install an infield softball field mix of clay, silt, and sand to allow our baseball and softball teams to have an alternative spot to practice on site due to the usage of not only the two fields on our site, but also the additional usage of Larry Field and Alumni Field just for playability. So we're looking to use this as a practice field. As we propose, we're going to be removing probably about 8,000 square feet of soil to turn into and then install infield mix, which is about 300 square feet, which is in the home plate area, which is within the wetland buffer area of removal. Just on the edge of that wetland of that 250 square feet, then we'd be looking to drive down 4 posts, 2 corners and 2 middle back plates to install some type of metal backstop with netting to prevent the balls from going into the wetland area onto the bottom of the page. We're trying to make this as impactful to the area, but impacting to the existing conditions of the field that we're using now, just in a different aspect is what we're looking to do.
You state your name.
Sorry, Ken Lynchy, Facility Director for Portsmouth Schools.
Any questions from commissioners?
Thank you. Lighting?
There's existing lighting already in the field already, which is mainly just used. There's 1 post to the left of the bottom yellow red line, and there's 2 posts on the far side. The lighting actually is only used for that field is for evening use for the band practice during the fall. Right now, we're looking to just use this as a practice field only. No games, no setups. We're not looking to do bleachers, benches, things like that. It's just a practice field setup.
So you won't be having the lighting on for often?
No. The lighting was upgraded as part of the 2018 lighting project for the high school in Larry Field.
Sorry to make the sidewalk. I just have a clarification question. Does that batting cage exist already, or is that?
No,
part
we will
of
be
the-
putting that in the ground as well. As I stated, it's a fence post system there'll be 4 posts, 2 on the edge, 2 in the middle, and it's a net that gets strung up like a flagpole net type system. So to alleviate the balls from going into the wetland
Got it.
for the
So
impact of
that's where
that.
The post will be,
Correct,
not
that's-
behind the home plate or,
It's within, it's 10 feet behind home plate.
oh,
That's how it goes.
Because it was a while ago, I can't remember exactly, we had an agreement about not moving the batting cage.
So with that being said, we're looking at a batting cage that is on the ground only. It's a solid post that it will sit on top of the ground and be removable. So that there'd be no impact to the wetlands whatsoever. And we'll look to use that on the left side of the ball field instead versus where we're proposing it now.
So you're gonna move.
We're gonna move it over to the left side, where it says install backstop fence.
Yeah.
We're gonna put it down that way as well. We're gonna put it down that way, which is completely out of the wetland buffer.
Okay.
And it's gonna be a removable system.
So the batting cage shown there is not.
That's being removed, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't submit an updated plan since, but we have proposed to remove that out of the picture.
and it's going down the
Yes, correct.
lawn.
Left field lot.
So I think at the site, we also talked about letting some of the buffer grow in a little bit in that area. And
Into where the backstop is or where the batting cage is.
with a backstop, so. Kind of just backstop into the left, so got the vegetation.
Yeah.
Like not mowing that area in front of the trees down below there.
We can put we can look at that and I can talk barefoot, we can do a site walk with Kate or Peter and look at a mower width or a 6 to 10 foot mark mowing spot. We can gauge. We just want to make sure, we agree, we'll create a buffer line. I just want to see how less impactful is it to the existing, without knowing where that light post is, engaging a square footage right now. Maybe that's something Kate and I or Peter and I can walk next week and report back that we're gonna increase a mower width or 2 mower width of a buffer.
That'd be great. And then this little bit follow-up to that was, I know you say it in. But so there's no fertilizer needed or anything like that?
Not an infield mix, no. We just drag it with a like a cultivator. It's just hosed behind a gator or tractor, it just turns the dirt over, goes down about a 1/2 inch to loosen the compaction for playability, and then that's it. We don't spray any weeds. Whatever weed spraying that we do outside the buffer lines is a fully organic OMRI certified program. The stuff that's outside the buffers that we do spray the athletic fields with, and that's on with Missions First, Organic First. But we don't spray anything on the infield darts. It's just a cultivator. We just turn it over to create the weeds from growing in.
So the organic is for weed control or for fertilizer?
For weed control outside the buffer zones is where we treat.
Get a healthy lawn. Any kind of nutrient.
This field here is one of our best fields. It's because limited use. The only time we really use this field is fall, and that's when our growth season really is heavy. And we also strive on our own seed. We do a lot of seeding to grow the growth.
This one doesn't get either fertilizer.
Majority of it's more majority out. That's good because it doesn't get used. Only person who uses this field is banned. And that's it. It has plenty of time to rest throughout from April until almost halfway through August.
Ready for motion?
Well, I have one more
Yeah,
question that
go
I
ahead.
don't remember if it was in the back or not, but we talked about the buffer markers.
Oh, yeah, that was a stipulation in the staff memo.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll put that in there too. Like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we recommend approval for the project at 50 in Jarvis Drive. With the stipulations that based on the new plan with moving the batting cage, assessing a mowing line along the edge of the vegetation to create a little more of a buffer, and putting the wetland markers out there as well.
Second that.
Discussion?
I just wanted to clarify, so an updated plan will be forthcoming after this.
That you'll bring to the.
Yes, planning board, yes, yeah.
Think putting the mow line would be.
Yeah, no, we'll identify the mow line and we'll relocate the batting cage and then we should be able, hopefully have the wetland buffer markers on there by then.
Just clarification. Who do we need to vote today based on?
Oh, that's a great question. I was, who voted last,
I voted last time.
so. we'll try this time, okay.
I was actually at the site once, so happy to.
Wonderful, okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have seconded. Any other discussion? Ready for vote? All in favor? Yes, great,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Item on the agenda. Wetland conditional use permit for 0 Maplewood Avenue.
Good afternoon. My name is Duncan Meller. I'm Principal Coastal Engineer with Civil Works New England, here on the behalf of the City of Portsmouth. The site we are looking at in this photo it's actually two cemeteries side by side. So the larger cemetery is the North Cemetery, and then the one where the work is going on is called the Union Cemetery. They abut each other. What we have in the corner there is a stone wall that had partially collapsed, and it received erosion during the storms this winter. So we went to New Hampshire DES and requested emergency approval to stabilize this before anything got exposed. DES did grant that emergency authorization, so the work is actually started and was actually finished this morning
Should be finished end of today.
and today, and then, but there's still seating to go on. Okay. So this is a little bit of an after the fact. You can see from the figure, we had temporary access to minimize the impacts. We actually came in, got permission from the condominium next door to come through in the most direct route. Machine came through and rebuilt the stone wall within its existing footprint. So we essentially kept the bottom of the wall and built up the wall on top of it as new wall, and then backfilled that and graded it out. You can see here for the impacts, I'm not sure if they were exactly this when we did the work, but those are approximate areas for the amount of work that was proposed to be done. And, some of it was the existing wall rebuilt within the same footprint. And then there was the backfill behind that wall, and then the temporary access in pink behind that. The city has agreed to go in with the seed mix recommended by the planning department, and that will be hopefully happening later this week.
Questions?
How much of the shoreline has actually been impacted? Have you actually been onto the shoreline, or did you coming from behind and rebuilt the wall?
We came in where the pink area is from the condominium property.
So the shoreline hasn't been impacted by any kind of work?
Oh, not by machines, no. Right, yeah. So there was no actual wetland impact. We were a wetland buffer.
What you guys did with repairing the stone wall, is that? I know it's kind of a very emergency type thing, so does that mean you need to go back and do anything further later on, or is it done until something
I
else happens?
think we're done, right?
That area is done.
You mind coming up to the microphone's on the table, I don't know. Well, back there.
Christine Sparviero, Public Works.
Oh, thank you.
So that whole area is done, that's marked up. There are plans to restore the wetlands further down. If you go to the image maybe above, it shows the area a bit more. Yep, so that square right there is a crypt. So everything on the other side of the crypt, the wetlands have just been washed away. So it's going to be included in another project that includes the outfall area. Yes, yep, so this is what we did is a totally separate project.
So your scope of repairs, there's an item on the second plan here. Install 8 ounces. The non-woven tile, that's the broken pipe, okay? So can you explain what that is, what it's made of, and you put stone on it afterward?
Yes, and it's intended for that. It's a filtering separation geotextile. So if you're familiar with it, it's typically a polypropylene fabric that's made for this geotechnical purpose. There's two general types. One is a woven. It looks kind of like the blue tarps you see. Some are heavier duty, where it's actually woven fibers. Those are prone to damage with rocks. So we prefer to use the non-woven, which looks probably more like a scrubby pad you might have in your kitchen sink. It's a randomly interwoven mat of irregular fibers that are going all kinds of different directions. And the 8 ounce means 8 ounces per square yard. So it's got some significant thickness to it. They're probably on the order of an eighth of an inch thick. And it's very survivable for rocks. If a rock gets dropped on it, it's not just going to tear a hole in it, and then you defeat the purpose of it being there. You want it to be a filter to separate the backfill material from the native material, which is finer grained. But then you also want it to be able to pass water. So it's got quite a high porosity, the water can pass right through the fabric, which you don't necessarily get with a woven.
There's not like a non-polypropylene version of this that,
Oh, like an organic or something?
yeah.
Not really for this use. I mean, this is buried, so it's not exposed. You would not want this on the surface exposed to sunlight because it would degrade and come apart over time. It's with the sunlight. So if it was something like an erosion control matting, that's absolutely appropriate to have something organic. And it doesn't have netting to catch critters and turtles and so on. But this is a buried material and it acts primarily as a filter and separator. It's got some structural strength to it.
It's gonna be there forever. That's the intention. I mean,
Yeah, it would be, right?
Did you guys just tear up grass in that area? Was there any other type of vegetation when your machinery came in that you're having to reseed and replant?
There were like shrubs and invasives kind of along the shoreline, and where that path was, we had to clear some of that out. But our trees and greenery foreman is gonna put something in there more suitable for that area, just to restore it and make it look nice.
Does it only say you guys are doing seed mix? So are you actually putting in some shrubs too, or?
That is the long-term plan. At this point in the season, it's too late to put in plantings. So the plan is to go back there in the fall and put some plantings in along the rock wall just to control the erosion there and stabilize the ground a bit more.
This is just more of a subjective kind of speculative question, but since you just talked about erosion, do you foresee this like being a chronic issue now? That
Again-
this wall is gonna break apart despite your best efforts, or?
This, I mean, well, you're the expert at this, so you can let you.
I mean, the limits of this were it was essentially an in-kind replacement.
Right,
So we did not go higher with it. There was no attempt here to counter sea level rise or anything like that. If sea level rise does accelerate in the future, I mean, that could potentially be an issue for the whole cemetery. And I don't know what the long-term plan on that would be. North Mill Pond is a little bit unusual because of that culvert under Maplewood Ave restricts the flow. If you've ever seen outgoing or incoming tide, that definitely has changed the tidal range in North Mill Pond. There were plans to replace that with a larger culvert with triple arches to improve the water quality in North Mill Pond. And New Hampshire DHR actually shot that down and said, no, that's not historical looking. So there was a permit in place at one point to do that. That was not given approval by the historical folks at the state. So I don't know what the long-term solution will be there. And, if that Maplewood Avenue culvert is replaced, it's not terribly friendly to small boats right now. There is a sewer main that goes through the middle of that. So if you were to paddleboard through there or kayak through there, you'd get halfway in and find there's a sewer main right in front of you. But it's certainly,
So we're about to repair that, it starts in 2 weeks.
okay.
Duncan's been out of town, sorry.
no, thank you for answering my question. I'm just curious because you had done it in kind and I know it was a bit of an emergency, so I'm just curious as to.
Right.
your thoughts
I mean,
about-
right now, sea level rise is not accelerating, but if it does in the future, I mean, obviously the city's gonna have to think about a whole bunch of properties all around as far as getting flooded more frequently.
Staff memo says applicant shall monitor the successive reseeded areas to ensure stabilization. Do you have at least a short term, they're suggesting 30 days monitoring, make sure everything
Yeah,
seeds appropriately?
yeah, our Parks and Greenery foreman will go out there and make sure that's taking, and he said, if it's not, we'll just put more seed down, yeah.
Any other questions? I'd like to make a motion.
I will make a motion to recommend approval for the Union Cemetery in kind. Pair.
After the fact,
It's a lot.
When I had two stipulations.
Absolutely.
One is the 30-day monitoring plan, if you will, I guess, for the seating area. Yep. And the other one is to plant native shrubs as appropriate in the temporary access way that you were mentioning in the fall when where.
We were planning to do that, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Just have it like.
Yeah, absolutely,
Right,
yeah.
Second. Discussion.
Yeah.
I'm done. Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 911 Sagamore Avenue.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Troy Jonkis. Work for a remodeling company here in town. We got asked to build the deck. And I'm kind of new to this process, so Kate helped me quite a bit with this. I appreciate that, thank you. The deck is gonna be the exact same footprint, except for a little bump out for the homeowner to put his grill on. So that right now is the existing deck. And the bump out is in the highlight. So it goes out 5 feet and 9 feet over, and it goes to the end of the stairs, which is still inside the 30-foot rear setback. Yeah, so basically tearing it all down, rebuilding all new pressure treated frame and Trex deck boards and new railings, new PVC AZAC for all the trim work. And I went to fill out a building permit and I realized I was in the wetlands area and the buffer, so I had to use a land use, so I had a visit last week. And now I'm here today to try to get this approved for the homeowner. The deck is not very large, it's only 8 feet wide, so just putting a little area for their grill will be, a good plus for them. Do you have any questions? And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
One tree is coming out, is that where the?
Yeah, there's a tree right next to the stairs, inside that yellow highlighted area. And it's just kind of a bush they planted a while ago,
The one
so,
on the other side is staying.
yeah. So right here on the bottom of the screen, on the left side, this is kind of where it would go out a little bit for the gentleman's grill. Instead of having the grill on the deck, it's only 8 feet wide there, so they're just trying to free up some space.
You mentioned Trex decking, using a fastener system
Yeah, we're using the hidden fastener system, so there won't be screw holes showing.
that set a certain spacing between each board.
Yeah, it's already manufactured, so the boards will butt right up to the hidden clips and leave the maybe an eighth of an inch or so. So there's no water to be pooled up or anything like that, yeah.
And what's the actual impact on the ground? Like, what are the number of pillars supporting the deck?
Yeah, so we will remove everything and remove the old footings because they're not up to code. They have to be 48 inches into the ground, and I like to build them a little wider, so they're 12 inches wide, so that's a good base. So we'll be pouring some new cement stoner tubes into the ground there.
But do you have any idea how many?
Yeah, I don't believe I have the footings,
One day.
plan up there. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I did a lot of rough drafts. I was trying to kind of learn my way through this and. The ledger board there'll be a new ledger board securely fastened to the house. And, the joists are only 8 feet out, so the footings will be around 6.5 feet for a little 18-inch hangover, which is allowed.
So what is or what will be under the deck?
So under the deck, we usually rake it and we put down some landscape fabric. Just so the weeds and things don't grow up through the deck.
So it's gonna be dirt, it's not gravel.
We'll put some top dressing, like, some top dress, rocks. Small rocks on top of the fabric, usually up against the, foundation. And around the footings. So the water, kind of can trickle away from the cement. Right now, it's just kind of dirt and some old mulch under there now.
You're kicking out, I know you're just taking out one tree, but, staff recommendation had talked about having some plantings to replace the, missing vegetation and also to kind of mitigate the impact the deck has. It doesn't have to be a tree, it could be a couple of bushes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tree being removed, the deck will be out and there's another bush there on the corner of the house, so that will stay. But they have some hydrangea plans to plant around the lattice, in front of the lattice and stuff like that. They want some big hydrangea, so. We've talked about that with them.
So with underneath and stone, it would be great to have an idea of how the stone,
Yeah,
an inch or 2 inches or whatever, and maybe just to provide that to the.
okay,
And that be like, a couple of inches would be great,
yeah,
yeah, so if you could.
all right. Yeah, that's not a problem.
And the other part too is the spacing. I know it says in here that, that they would be spaced apart with the boards, but, so I guess traditionally the Trex or the different types of
Mhm.
composites they are called to find out what they normally do with the spacers, because we have one at home and it's like pretty close.
Yeah,
And he did say it was like an 1/8 to a 16th inch, which would be not a lot, more closer to like, quarter or half inch would be great. It doesn't make sense in this to ask for it because you're replacing an existing deck that already has the boards.
Right.
But, just as a,
yeah, they have them actually right up to each other.
yeah, so anything that's an improvement in this case and
Yeah.
doing it kind of. So it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we usually, we usually just trust the material, the clips, there's a couple different clips, but. They seem to all be perfect for the right space in between boards and water running out. Yeah,
Is there any other landscaping that's happening?
well, they just did a driveway, but, you know, I'll make it look a lot better than it does now. But as far, when when you have new lattice and new hydrangea and some new mulch, I think they're gonna put a little cobblestone border next to that brick there that you see, touching the mulch, so. You know, it should be. It should suffice.
And staff memo says, installing new native wetland buffer plantings equivalent to the, deck addition, like the new part you're putting in, which is like 45 square feet, which is probably that area that you're talking about, the hydrangea mulch.
Right. Yeah.
Motion?
This picture too was, I think in March maybe, and it's a little more, it looks a little more cleaner. 'Cause there are some grasses that have grown up a little bit in that area, so.
Motion that we recommend approval. 9/11 Sagamore Ave. With the following conditions, that and shall install the crushed stone underneath the deck and show a cross section or indicate the deck of the crushed stone in the application. And that condition install these two hydrangea bushes around the decking.
Yeah.
Allows. Yeah, the boundary markers, I think it was suggested to do it across the driveway.
These are, wetland boundaries.
So look at the picture that. There, yes, the wetland. Okay, so cross the driveway on their property, what, 50 feet apart? That's what we've been telling people is usually on a 25-foot vegetated buffer, so right around here, we ask applicants to place little 4-inch placards that say sensitive environmental area, do not cut, which indicates this wetland down here, so maybe on the other side of their garage would be an appropriate place where it encourages them not to mow that area on the edge.
Do you have those? Do you supply those? Yeah,
$5 each, buy them upstairs. Big. Just stakes.
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
The crushed stone is underneath the entire footprint of
Entire
the
deck,
deck,
yeah.
right, not just around.
Yes,
Yeah. Second? Second, discussion?
One question I have here is just in terms of placement of those signs. So in this particular case, the work is very much removed from the buffer area where there's no intention of doing any work. And to the left of the garage and driveway, below the garage and driveway. I don't believe that it is a full 25-foot buffer at this point, based on what the mowed lawn looks like. Obviously, we want to encourage them to increase that buffer as much as possible, but if it were a bigger project, maybe we would look for more offset here. But it might be reasonable to just ask to build this on the current edge or add as much edge as willing to give us today.
Going out 20.
Saying 25 feet would be into their driveway, like there's two, yeah. So,
I agree with that in this case. You're okay with that? Yeah, it's good. Right, ready for vote? Favor? Opposed? Great,
Thank you.
you'll get a letter from you with the petitions?
yes, we'll go a
All right.
letter decision and give you the date for submission to the planning board, which will be a meeting in July. And it will give you a deadline to submit new materials by then.
talk with owner Neil about what those will look like. I'll do the list of those.
Okay, thank you. So,
So 100 Durgan Lane requested postpone, but we don't motion to postpone it. Since it's not a motion.
I will make the motion to postpone 100 Durgan Lane until the July meeting as per the applicant's request.
Second,
Second that?
all in favor? Next on the agenda is 1 Sagamore Grove.
Afternoon. I don't like the no lights. It's been a wild day, so it's a really calming feeling being in here. I really appreciate it. Tax map 201 lot 8, it's owned by Brett Berger and his company Flipping Burgers LLC. Do like that. I know that on a different project, he had his sign up, and apparently Jason got a call because they thought he was opening up a restaurant in a residential district. Brett can't be here today. He's traveling for work, and actually his wife is doing kindergarten end of school duties. So I'm here by myself, and hopefully I can make all the decisions we need to make. Parcel is 15,249 square feet. It is a existing lot of record. There's a house on the parcel, barely a house. It's old and it's in tough shape. We're not asking for any variances on this, which is, I find pretty unique on some of the, I'll call it older lots with older homes on it. So we're looking to tear down the house, build a new conforming home. The parcel is almost entirely in the 100-foot buffer. The wetland line, if you go up a little bit, the other up. It's okay, right there. So you can see that the wetland line follows the property line and back. It probably way back was all filled to make that lot as well as the other lots buildable on Sagamore Grove. There's an existing septic system on the parcel. They recently, the city upgraded the sewer in this area, so there's a stub for a new sewer service on it. So when we rebuild, the septic tank will be removed, the leach field will be removed, and we have the stub to connect with the low pressure sewer system. We have 20% building coverage allowed in the zone. We're at 7.2. We're gonna go up to 15%. We're allowed 40% open space right now. We're at 86 and we're gonna go down slightly to 75.8. As mentioned, almost all the lot is in the 100-foot buffer. If you look at the top right corner where the water service and is coming in, that is the only portion of the lot that's not in the 100-foot buffer. And that's outside the building permit area, building envelope. What we're proposing to do is a nice new home with a 2-car garage, a driveway on the left side with permeable materials, and the yard is primarily lawn. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna set wetland buffer stake plaques at the 25-foot buffer and let the area that's in the heavy green revegetate it as a natural buffer and let it reestablish. We're gonna also put 4 sugar maples along that buffer to help delineate that area between natural buffer and then have a small lawn in the other portion. The area that's in the 25-foot that's not colored, that's primarily natural, but if you went to the sidewalk, you'd have seen some of Walter's old construction materials. There's a bunch of concrete blocks in there. And so those will be removed. Thank you, Kate. And then on to the right of that, we're gonna add some low bush blueberries near where the stormwater will run around the building. for stormwater management, stone drip edges around the perimeter of the building where we can, obviously not at the garage. And if you go to the grading plan, you can go down one more sheet. We have a small depression on, up in that northeast corner of the lot that just 4 inches deep to allow that first flush to settle out. We're not making a rain garden, but it's just gonna allow the water to settle out a little bit and then let it flow around the building towards the back in a small vegetated swale and then dissipate before it heads into the wetlands and the natural area, then the wetland. There is some natural and nice specimen trees in the southeast corner, which is just to the right of those blueberries. Those will remain in that area, will remain as a natural area. Proposing in our lawn area, the revegetation, so forth, we'll have slow release fertilizer and we'll try to minimize the impact. I really think that it's a betterment. You know, the lawn's right up to the wetlands. We're trying to make it a better place. I'm out of words. Thank you.
Sure. Do you have the numbers for how much of the existing house, what square footage of the existing house is in the 0 to 50 foot buffer and how much of the proposed house? Or like
In the
what's
50,
Yes, yeah.
I never computed that.
Just
I
to see the
have it.
difference, you know, the increase that's going into the.
Yeah, I just don't have that.
We're on site, we got like, it's like around 1,000 total, like even less than that. In additional in the buffer. It says if you scroll
If you
over.
go to the top, it's the total buffer. Go up there. I still can't read it. So we have existing buffer area impervious is 2,030, and we're going up to 3,690. That, the whole buffer,
That's zero.
yeah. We just didn't go to the 50, I just.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Additional. 1,660.
1,000, like 660.
Yeah. And, you know, we're still got a significant green space on the parcel and there's nothing in that 25-foot area.
Let's say including 1,175 square feet of permeable surfaces, so that's.
Right, that's the patio in
so
back,
That 3,690 is
including,
both permeable
and
and impervious?
yes. So if you take out that, it's almost the same.
If you take out the patio.
Yeah, if you take away the permeable surfaces in that area, you're down to a similar number, as well as the, I believe the driveway is permeable as well. You scroll up just a little bit higher, that note. Keep going. Nope, that's not, I guess it didn't say it. There you go on the next one. Permeable driveway. Yeah. And then the walkway. So what we're trying to do is all the hardscape is permeable.
But you're essentially doubling the square footage of the footprint of the structure.
If you looked at, have you been out or?
I didn't get a chance to go out.
It's, I mean, you can see on the red, it's very small. It is in the front setback, it's challenging.
Majority of that garage area is,
With-
and it's part of the driveway, is on top of the existing septic.
Correct,
Would be removed as part of this project.
correct.
Yeah.
And even, you know, obviously we're putting it on municipal sewer, but even if somehow someone were to renovate the house, that septic's going away, you know, it's, well, if they renovated, it would just be abandoned. But we're building over it, it'll be removed.
Reading the maintenance plan. That's, I think, critical because this is being flipped, so that's gonna go to the new homeowner, and I do think there are some things in there that need to be put in or spelled out or changed with regards to the fertilizer and pesticide use. How to maintain those pervious surfaces.
Yeah.
And then that 0 to 25 foot buffer, like what they can and cannot do. In that, the new owners can and cannot do in that area. So I mean, when we do like conditions on this, I also kind of spell
Yeah.
out more what those I think are, but I think that just needs to be updated.
We can, that wouldn't be on there, Kate, that's actually in the report. I have no issue with that.
The 0 to 25 foot now, you said it's mostly lawn. I wish I
Yeah.
had gotten a chance to go out there, so.
Well, there's actually photos in there that sort of will help you.
If there be any
But-
option to do more than just a seed mix in there, like do some shrubs in there, like give it a little more
I mean, it's,
diversity.
I think there's actually, when you look at it, there is a lot of diversity there already. And you know, if you look at Mike's report, he felt that it was a pretty good community and a pretty good approach. That's the wetland that's looking into the wetland already. So.
Yeah, along those lines, I wanted to ask, like, it's great that you have a large part of the lawn, but can we do away with the lawn? Can we go towards
Well,
grasses, bushes, not lawn? And because you have the opportunity to do that and to present it to the new owner instead of putting a lawn in there, which the new owner will.
well, I think if you go back to the site plan, I don't, in concept, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think it, I'll call it a hardship if the person can't play cornhole in their yard, or you know, as little kids run around and play t-ball or something in their yard. I think it's fair that everyone has a little bit of space to use as lawn area. So that's why we did it. We tried to balance, you know, respecting the 25-foot no cut buffer and maintaining a little bit of lawn so someone has a place to, you know, not just enjoy the patio and have high grasses right next to the patio, but to enjoy the area around their house and to walk around their house and to do those things. So you know, I think that when you look at this, there's a pretty substantial area that is being reclaimed as buffer and that is, you know, enhanced.
Yeah, I hear you, but if you're buying in an area like this, you are buying into a wetland and that comes with its own constraints. Like
Yeah.
if you decide to live in a place that isn't a wetland, then, and we decide to build this, then there has to be some kind of compensation for eating up that wetland.
And I guess that's why we provided what we provided, is to make it better.
Didn't really feel like there was much use of grass space that would be able to be run around on. I mean, it sort of slopes down. I don't know if maybe there's some middle ground that could be. I was trying to pull up the topo map.
Well, we have, right here's our grading plan. And so when you look at the right side, that's not you know, you want that swale to function and you don't want, you know, you want the water to flow through there, so that kind of needs to be maintained. It's nice to have a little bit of lawn in front of the house. And then on the left side, there is a little bit of slope, but not substantial. These are 1 foot contours, so, you know, we're grading from, you know, 22 for the finished floor of the garage, and then 20 outside, and then down to a 19. So it's got a little bit of slope. It's not, you know, there's no steep slope. The only steeper slope is generally the area where we're not disturbing, which is that bottom corner where those trees are.
I know you mentioned it, but that little white bump thing right there where you said is construction debris, so you're just planning to
Wait,
make that
so it-
lawn, like what?
No, so it's all kind of grown up,
Okay,
and he's got, it might be in the photos, it may not be, but, I actually might have it in a extra photo. Let me just see here. We're just gonna let that continue to naturalize.
yeah,
We're not gonna disturb it.
got it.
And there is
So
a bunch
that's
of natural
gonna
stuff
stay
growing there.
And let it grow around it.
Well, no, we're gonna pull out the block.
Okay.
That's our goal, is to pull out the block. And then let it continue to naturalize.
Got it.
Which it pretty much has.
Thank you.
Sure.
You could pull up the existing condition.
That's the watershed plan, but that's essentially the, whoop,
So, so, yeah, that one. So I think it was that one that maybe asked about the septic system, but, I know there's not an overlay of showing where the garage is for, you know, over the septic system you show, but, there is a difference in size, and probably impact too, between the garage and the septic system. I didn't know if there was any opportunity to move the garage. I mean, it's pretty big to, you know, scale on the garage end of it, and making the building have more of an impact and more of a permanent impact in the buffer, but not the 25 foot, we recognize. But aesthetically, is there a possibility to move the garage closer to the road a little bit? To just get it a little bit further away from the wetland, or decrease the size of the garage in the back?
I don't know about, I mean, the way it's shaped, that there's access into the garage as part of storage, and from the rear of it, you can see kind of the outline of the garage and so forth, but moving it forward is a potential option. We haven't discussed that with the, you know, the owner's not here to discuss it, but you know, it probably would change some of the aesthetic of the building. We did purposely site the driveway and the garage pretty much in the same location as it is. We had considered moving further to the right because we can go further. Built the existing buildings a little further. The setback is a little bit further, and that could move us over. But when you look at the proximity of the other home and the grades in that area, we chose to be, I mean, we're all in the 100-foot buffer. We're preserving the 25-foot, but we did make a purposeful decision to be a little bit further away from that other house for respect of space and open space. and to work better with the grading and to stay away from the buffer that's down on the bottom. As we move to the right, we would, potentially get into those trees that are the mature trees and have to lose those. So there was purpose in how we got there.
Maybe in here and I missed it. What is the residence being built on? Is it a full foundation? Is it a slab? Is it, what's the?
To my knowledge, it's going to be a slab on grade. There may be a crawl space, but there's no intent based on the water table to have a full basement there. I always recommend to have at least the crawl space so that if you want to do some plumbing changes or something, you're not ripping up concrete. I would say that based on having done the former Golden Egg site and that whole area, there's plenty of ledge in that area.
Is that also a reason for not, full basement? potentially?
Well, from a, there's a cost standpoint, but it, in my eyes, it's more the water table than a ledge issue.
That's not an issue for like permeable driveway.
No, it's down, there's enough
Water
area.
table's okay for permeable driveway, but not, okay.
Yeah, I don't want to go that deep.
Yeah, okay.
I will make a motion and approval of 1 Sagamore Grove. With the stipulations of having it clearly noted, whether it be in the deed or I'm not sure where, about management of the permeable surfaces for future homeowners, as well as wetland buffer and the 25 foot, and what that means as far as being on that. In that envelope. Anything else?
Fertilizer and pesticide use,
Uh,
or our
yes.
ordinances for that, for this, and how they relate specifically to this property.
Yes, making sure those are clear as well.
Okay,
Would it be possible to add something about anything to the left of the 25-foot buffer or something? Maples, like clearly stated as a cut that needs to stay no cut
Well-
in the future.
well, that's what the plaques say, and I think that's what Jessica is insinuating with the statement that we need to follow or have statement regarding what your ordinance says.
Helpful to that as well.
Yeah.
So you also have anything they want?
Kind of just add one, considering reducing this footprint of the building, whether it's the building itself or going to one car garage. Maybe garage, just providing some explanation for why. it must be done.
Second? Okay, it's discussion.
I agree with Alice, and I live near this property, so I am very familiar with it. And I appreciate that it needs significant work and updating. I've walked by that building countless times. But it would be nice to see something a little smaller on it. And again, I think that goes to Stuart's point a bit in that if you want to live across the street from the creek, there's certain things you might have to consider. A 2-car garage, like just being in the wetlands and the wetland buffer area. So I do struggle with the size of the project.
I agree with that. I do appreciate the 0 to 25 foot buffer being vegetated. But I think we probably would have asked that regardless of what the size of that house ends up becoming. Yeah, I think, doubling the footprint in the 100 foot buffer it's a lot. Start blank slate, you're demolishing everything, so.
For discussion purposes, yeah, I don't know how we can have it as a condition or we got to find that. But it's always fun. So I guess we have an opportunity to talk about the rest.
Yeah, I struggle with it too, and I'm wondering how, is there a way to, in some way, compensate for not that much space in the buffer and increasing the area in the buffer? What could be suggested?
Yeah. We'd like to see our minds. Should be. Maybe a different option, smaller.
I think that it would be enough to ask for much less lawn, like very minimal lawn, and still garage, or do you
And
think that,
maintain the size of the structure now.
like? I guess not.
Two options, like,
I'm just saying, like, maybe there's an option for a much smaller garage, or maybe there's a second option where the garage stays as it is, and what we see as proposed lawn becomes not lawn, and it becomes revegetated with other things that kind of dissuade entrance into that space. I don't know.
It doesn't even have to dissuade entrance, you can have plants,
Right.
kids will run around them, dogs will go.
Well, I
It
would
doesn't
like
have
to, I would like to plan a
dissuade
more vegetated
entrance,
space that we
yeah.
can fix, but.
Well, some people do get wound up about ticks.
so. Before we kind of decide how we want to go with this, does anyone else have anything? to Say about this project? Right.
I'll just add that I concern about the footprint.
I'd also like to say, I do appreciate like all the permeable surfaces, I appreciate all your work in the. Within the 25 foot. So there was definitely some thought here, so thank you for
Geez, and I thought it was gonna be a slam dunk today. What I'll share with them and kind of gathering this is, I personally think that the lawn area is kind of, it's a key element for people to have good modest lawn. I think this is pretty small, and I look at my lawn and I can mow it in a half an hour with a push mower that was patented in 1899, but and it's probably bigger than this, but I think it, to me, hearing you is, it's the garage, it's that hard surface. And so if that's kind of, can I, say that as our takeaway, and we'll do what we can to reduce the size of the impervious.
Postpone that. Recommend.
It seems that,
And we will vote, and I think we're.
You should withdraw your motion.
I would,
Yeah.
Oh.
yes, I will draw my motion first.
Right now,
Go wherever.
we just keep discussing.
good call.
Yeah, so then you would come back with a revised,
Yeah, smaller footprint.
or the second option, kind of what we talked about, maybe where, yeah, there is no lawn, but it sounds like that's probably not.
the direction that.
I think it's tough to sell today is no lawn.
Well, is there a way to proceed with approving it? Somehow say if the plan remains as is, then you compensate with additional wetland planting or reduce it and you don't have to do it, but you know.
But we have to have like reducing by a number, we have to come up probably with a number.
So-
that we want to reduce by.
Obvious footage.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love for you to go in that direction, when I go to the planning board, they're gonna just go, what does that mean? So we need to be. But I really like where you're going.
Right, Jess, you want to withdraw?
I withdraw my motion.
Or 1 second, do you want to make the next one?
I will make a motion that we postpone this application for 1 Sagamore Grove till the July meeting. Does that work in your time frame?
Yep.
With some revised plans.
Yeah, and we can do that.
Was there a second on the last motion? Want to withdraw your second on the
Yeah,
last
I
one?
will do it.
Okay, and then is there a second for the new motion to postpone? All right, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Next on the agenda is State Wetland Bureau application for 131 Ray's Avenue and 203 Maplewood Avenue.
The armrest. Good afternoon, everyone. Neil Hansen and Stephanie Tetrell with Ty & Bonds. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
Nice. All right. Nice to see everyone inside and out of the rain, for those of you that braved the elements with us last week. So I'm gonna start by giving just a brief sort of background on this project, because this has been hanging out there for a while. And when this project came through the commission 3 or so years ago, I think there's a lot of member turnover since then. So just for some background, this project went through the local land use approval process. We started, if I recall correctly, sometime in 2020 and received our final approvals from the planning board in December of 2021. There was then a lengthy appeal process, which is recently resolved, I believe last fall. So we've sort of been picking back up with getting the state permit applications filed. We did receive our shoreland application, our shoreland permit last Thursday. So we do have that in hand now for this project. We've also submitted to DS for alteration of terrain, and then so the existing site is on Rains Ave, corner of Rains Ave and Maplewood, actually. Consists of 4 parcels, actually. The Vanguard Gym is 1 Rains Ave. There's an abandoned vacant office building at 31 Rains Ave, and then the old Cindy Ann Cleaners at 203 Maplewood. And then the 4th lot there is it's between the Cindy Ann Cleaners building and North Mill Pond, and there's no structures on that parcel. So the project will remove all 3 of those buildings from the site, as well as all the associated paving, parking areas. And then we'll be constructing 2 new 5-story buildings on the Vanguard, 1 Rains Ave side of the site. So the right side of the page, it's on the screen, will be a 5-story hotel. And then the building on the corner of Maplewood and Rains will be a 5-story mixed-use building, retail/restaurant space to be determined on the 1st floor, and then upper floor residential units. The 5th floor of that building is about half the footprint of the lower stories. I don't believe it's not quite small enough to qualify as a penthouse, but it is set back from both the pond side and from the roadside. So the site plan that's up on the screen now, within the 50-foot buffer, we have the segment of what will be the North Mill Pond Greenway. It's a porous pavement surface. That's within the 50-foot buffer. And then the buildings are sited outside of the 100-foot buffer. With the exception, there's a small corner of the building, the mixed-use building that is within that 100-foot buffer, but it's the 100-foot buffer from the opposite side of Maplewood Ave. So Maplewood Ave is in between the actual wetland edge there and that portion that's in that 100-foot. For stormwater treatment, there's currently none on the site. If you go next page, Kate. We are adding, oh, sorry, 2 pages. Yeah, there, no, sorry. I can go back one, actually. There we go. So the existing site has no stormwater treatment. For those of you that were on the site walk, we all got to see firsthand the rainfall just ripping right off the parking lot into the pond. So the proposed grading and drainage plan here, all of the pavement from the parking area as well as the roof drainage will be tied into 2 underground detention systems. The site's sort of split in half. So there's realistically a separate detention and treatment unit for both buildings. So detention through a stormwater filtration unit before discharging out into North Mill Pond. The neighborhood, the Vaughn Street Rains Ave neighborhood, the drainage now currently runs through the site and discharges out in North Mill Pond as well. So as part of this project, we are rerouting that pipe and then also adding in a water quality unit to provide some level of treatment for the stormwater runoff from the adjacent roadways. So you can see the pipe run going up between the center of the 2 buildings there. And then right towards the top of the screen, there's 2 manhole units side by side that are sort of grayed out. I think yeah, right there. So that will, as the water comes onto the site, so all the water through that pipe is from the city streets. The first flush will bypass into that unit on the left, which will be a water quality unit. And will then discharge back into the same system before going out to the pond. So as part of this project, we will be providing some additional level of water quality for the roadways in the area. And I think I will turn it over to Steph and she will kind of run through some of the improvements to the buffer that we'll be doing. Oh, one more thing before I turn it over. So as part of the approvals with the planning board, there is an existing pier and old boat ramp structure on the site. The proposed project as approved through the planning board contemplates restoring that pier and then adding a kayak launch alongside of it. Those 2 components are not part of this application that was submitted to NHDES. That once you get into that, those 2 structures, we would be within the tidal water itself, which is a different level of permitting. So we've separated those out. And at some point we'll be resubmitting or submitting a new permit application for those 2 components, which will then have us come back here as well as part of that. So all of the work that is part of this current application is within the tidal buffer, and there's no work within the tidal wetland itself. Now I'll turn it over to Steph.
So the buffer itself, as you've seen, is highly developed, relatively disturbed. There is an existing sort of thin forested community on the leftmost corner as we're looking at it here. Some in the center area, another forested shrub area, and then a thin strip of forest on the right-hand side as we're looking at it today. The species composition is dominated by invasives, mainly autumn olive, and then other just typical kind of like early successional, I don't want to say junk species, but like junky black locust, Norway maple invasive. There were a few cottonwoods out there and black cherry. So relatively thin, not the healthiest looking plant community, and pretty much dominated by invasive species. Staghorn sumac is also a dominant species that's out there. So we have proposed a pretty robust
planting and revegetation plan. As Neil said, it's all above the highest observable tide line in the upland. And that line itself is well-defined by the break and slope. There's a steep bank into the pond that's consisting of rock, rubble, armored, not a vegetated corridor or by any means. And we have the community greenway path going through there and landscaping, as you can see on either side. Relative to the minimum vegetation standards for the state, we are meeting those with this revegetation plan. There's a center portion there that is highlighted with a black dashed line. It's kind of a peanut shaped area. It's a little hard to see, there's a busy plan, but that is designated as our natural woodland buffer to remain in an unaltered, unmaintained condition. The remaining portions of the vegetation will be maintained and protected in the long run through the Greenway easement trail. So there's not a lot of like wildlife or habitat buffer or function to speak of, but I would like to hear your questions if you had any, and we can kind of roll a conversation from there.
Yeah, and just one last thing that to point out is that this plan is the same plan that was approved by the planning board in 2021. We haven't made any changes to the plan that was submitted to DES, with the exception of the natural woodland area that Steph just mentioned. That was as part of the shoreland permit. We needed to identify that area to be unmaintained. So it'll be obviously during construction, that area will be disturbed, it will be planted, and then once it's planted, it will remain are allowed to naturalize or renaturalize. So other than those or that one item, everything else is as it was approved in 2021.
I know the last time that you came before us, we had concerns. This is obviously a contaminated site with the cleaners, and there's some historical understanding that it might have been a gas station prior to the cleaners. And that I read through the plan, it looks like it's just gonna be capped and sort of monitored. I know it already is monitored, but is there any further, like, once you get into this site and start finding stuff, is there a plan to address?
Yes.
What you might find?
Yeah, short answer, yes. So we have done further investigations, which is typical through the pre-construction process. It's a typical urban fill site. It's actually not as bad as we thought it was gonna be. I think we were anticipating a lot of what you were describing, and what was found was just what you would typically find in an urban fill situation. So it will be managed per NHDS standards throughout construction. But from the investigations we've done, we haven't found anything concerning, I guess is the best way to put it.
Was reading through the minutes from the planning board and our CUP back in 2021. And one of the things that was talked about was the parking arrangements going on. And I know partially you were gonna get a shared agreement with, I'm not sure who, but an adjacent property or something for 25 shared spaces. Is that still and to meet your?
Yeah, that was part of we had a conditional use permit for shared parking, so that's all covered under that. I don't believe it's been formalized yet because of the appeal process, but it would be carried through as a condition of approval, the planning board approval. Yeah, and actually now that you mentioned that, if I recall correctly, it was parking spaces in the garage level of the 145 Maplewood office building.
And then there were also 18 like reserved spaces. that
Yes.
Were not, I guess, being built right away, but it's like a wait and see if we needed them.
Yep.
Where are those?
So if you kind of look at where the gaps in the landscape plan are adjacent to the parking lot. There's actually there's 4 different spots. So there's So when you come up that center entrance drive, if you keep going straight, there's a landscape spot with no trees or shrubs. Yeah, that's one of them. There's one to the left of that. Again, another landscape spot with no trees or shrubs. Yeah. And then there's one all the way to the right where it says buffer seed mix is called out. And then there's some parallel spots just to the right of that. So those are the 4 areas that are, they're permitted as reserve future parking. I forget the exact
And I think
phrasing of that.
with those, the planning board said like some study or something where they just weren't, I don't know, like, they weren't just gonna be built because.
It's very possible. I did not
Okay.
reread the conditions of planning board
Yeah.
approval today, so
Obviously, we'd love it without those AD reserves.
yeah, so there's also a large portion of the parking too on the site is lift systems within the mixed use building. So they're in the rear. There's 2 different sections of them in the rear of the building. And that will all be, I believe is going to be a managed parking situation that will be shared across the two buildings.
Yeah. Stephanie, when you were talking about the unaltered woodland buffer area, I didn't catch where that was, and then you said the rest of the area would be. Rest of the.
Yeah, so it's kind of in the center of this screen there, and there's a heavy black dashed line.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
it.
That blocking you off. Yeah, so on the shoreline side of that, or?
Within that dashed circle.
Inland, yeah, inland from the path. So that area too, you can kind of see it on this plan a little bit, the grading, but that area is bermed up. Basically along the entire parking lot, and then it also continues down where it goes off the page here. That's all bermed up to create it's 3 or 4 feet high to screen the parking lot from the path, or path from the parking lot, however you want to view that. So it's an elevated berm that's then planted, and then there's decorative fencing along the parking lot too for additional screening in those areas where there's head-in parking.
So everything else is gonna be maintained on some. So is there any possibility, I mean, I know this is not. Would there be other areas that are? Or the description of the maintenance?
I believe there's a maintenance plan on the landscape note sheet. Because there are different mow areas. There's some areas that are mowed less frequently than others. Is it in the straight in? There we go. Mowing of the buffer seed mix area following establishment and acceptance shall occur twice a year. In the spring,
Note 15
Yeah.
on L100.
so that's more specifically related to the seeded areas.
Question for you, do you know the average square footage for one parking space?
They are 8.5 by 19. 170-ish.
Yeah, and if we had 18 more of those, that's a lot of square footage that's taken away from the green space.
Yes.
I'm kind of struggling with that because if we approve it and then you have the opportunity to clear out 18 times, 3,000 square feet. It kind of defeats the process.
Yeah, I don't know if you have that planning board letter.
Yeah.
They're
They wanted to make sure that it was gonna be absolutely necessary. that they absolutely needed those spaces, like they would have to come back to the planning board or something. Or do a study, can't find it exactly.
It likely, it would likely have been that they were gonna require a parking demand study be done before building those. I don't know if that's exactly how it was worded, but
Yeah, it says, construction of reserve parking will be subject to usage reports submitted to the city demonstrating additional parking is needed. Only after alternative options to construction of reserve spaces have been considered and reviewed by the city. If city staff determines further review is needed, applicant will be referred to the planning board for further review.
yeah, so there's a lot that would have to be done. Yeah, there would be, they basically have to prove, the applicant would have to prove the need and prove that there's no alternative options before being allowed to construct those is how that's written.
Thank you.
Presumably the planning board would potentially.
It sounds like by the way that that's written is it would be need based. So if there was the need for 6, that the request would be only for 6 because that's what the parking demand would have shown.
And is any condition for if or when those places are built, that there's some compensation somewhere for turning up, putting tarmac onto what was green space?
Based on the way that condition is written, it doesn't, I don't know if there is any,
No, just
yeah,
I mean, it sounds like there might be the option might be given if it's coming back to the planning board and city staff, like they might be able to say something, but that's.
yeah, and the way and Peter, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the reserve parking ordinance is written is that it is approved as a future reserve, and typically you wouldn't need to go back to get additional approval to build it. Because it is in the wetland buffer is why that condition was put on there, so that need would need to be shown before building it, but typically that would not be the case.
I'm just not understanding what you're reading this correctly, but what is proposed to be there if the parking is not needed to be there?
green space.
Green space, it'll be a seed mix.
But am I just missing where that's up on?
No, you wanna go back to that?
It's defined by the symbology of the shading over that area.
Yeah.
So that gray shading underlined, if
That
you go
could be
back
reserve
to,
parking. She's showing.
Yeah, so it looks like it's called out as buffer seed mix.
and going back to the question about maintenance, that's what would be mowed. The other vegetation you see there, trees and shrubs and perennials as they're listed on the plant schedule, which would not be mowed typically, but could be in theory, I guess, under this, the way this is.
Yeah, I guess the difference between what's designated as natural woodland and everything else is the natural woodland, you just leave. Everything else, if there's pruning that needs to be done, you could go in and do that. But yeah, to Steph's point, I think shrubs and trees in general don't need a lot of, they can be left alone for the most part. And I believe that would be the intent here.
Yeah, and I guess it would depend too if there's grass in that area too, like that would be trees and shrubs. Which is
Yeah, the way it's hatched, it looks like it's all, at least on the inland side of the shore path, is all buffer seed mix under the trees. I don't see a lot of call-outs or any call-outs for mulch.
seed mix, so that's mowed, so can that be mowed once a year instead of twice a year?
I suppose
Says twice a year.
twice a year, is that just for during establishment or is that forever?
I think it's forever. Not to be less than 3 inches twice a year, is how it's written now.
No, because she just. You guys do it.
Canopy, I don't know,
It could, I mean, I think there's, and it's stated here somewhere that mowing encourages the root growth, and part of that buffer function of intercepting the runoff from the upland towards the water. You really want that density, stem density lower to the ground. So the taller you get it, the less lower the stem density becomes, the less buffering potential and buffer action you get out of that vegetation. I think twice a year is typical.
If you plant something that's not known, then it has more roots and then it will absorb more water because there's going to be vegetation and stuff in the ground, so.
yeah, and there
Counteract.
There is a substantial amount of non-grass plantings on the pond side of the path. There's a whole strip, I think it's a continuous strip of trees and shrubs. Yeah, basically between the path and the water, that whole sort of serpentine area is all a mix of ground covers, shrubs, trees. And the idea is because this path is community space, it's gonna be open to the public. That there's certain areas where people can get off the path, but then there's also sort of that vegetated barrier to kind of keep people away from the edge. So it was sort of, there's a give and take there that was, thought through during the original design process of, giving some space for people, because people are gonna step off the path regardless, so you kind of want to give them a spot to do so, instead of having them go wherever they want. And that was part of the idea behind creating those little pockets along the trail.
So, yeah, you kind of see that on the land side of that, but on the water side of it. You don't want people going down below on the other side of the strip.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a really steep drop off too, so there's really nowhere to go. If you're gonna go to the water, you're gonna go to where the, future kayak ramp, may be. Again, not part of this application, but that's a pretty gradual slope down to the water, so. If you're trying to get to the water, that's where you're gonna go.
But my other question is about people walking along the area and any kind of barrier in addition to the vegetation that will keep dogs from going down below, mixed with the fence or something like that. So,
There's currently no fence on the plan.
At the minimal signage, but if you go beyond this trail and you go up by Hodgson Brook. On the west end area where they put the trail in, there just seems like that's where everybody's going with their dogs, on the trail. And most of them have them on leashes, but
There is a leash law,
yeah.
not that everyone follows it.
Sure. So signage at the minimum would be great,
Yeah, they're part of the planning board approval was the wetland placards. I think this was one of the early projects where that was a requirement of. So those are part of the original approval.
I'd be excited to go.
Oh, no dogs.
Yeah.
So it is, because it is community space, there will be a community space easement with the city. So any of those types of restrictions, I believe, would have to be worked out in coordination with the city legal department. So I'm sure that that's feedback that they would like to have, but I don't know if the applicant can just put up a no dog sign in a deeded community space area. I'm not saying they can't, I just don't know.
Or just on the path.
Oh, I go, sorry, I thought you meant like no dogs on the property.
No.
No, sorry.
No, that
Just
would
to
be
keep them
great.
from trampling.
Yeah, no, sorry, that makes sense.
You're worried about dogs running free down to the shore and.
Yeah, and even people walking their dogs down.
Okay.
Well, that goes into a larger issue of there is no dog space in Portsmouth.
Exactly, and that's
where
why I
dog
don't,
owners can go, so they will end up there
Yeah.
because they can't go anywhere else.
I know,
So that's,
this is like the worst place for them.
yeah,
Well, I wonder, like, where you first enter the path from the left-hand side, how there's, like grass space right before that ribbon of bed starts. I don't know if like a little split rail fence there with a big sign. Like, no, because that's one access point is right there at the beginning of the trail. Like, I don't know about the other end, but. Right, so landscaping's kind of a barrier, but. That just looks like, hey, here's the opening down to the water.
Have there been discussions about that type of thing along the whole idea of this community trail? Multiple properties that this, this comes up over and over.
But I don't really see this, I don't know what the avenue is to make sure.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure it's the city easement all the way along that whole place, right? There's at least 3 large developments,
Yeah.
other issues in there too, so.
Yeah, I
Part of a bigger.
yeah, exactly. To that point, I would think whatever would be done on any of those sites, you'd want to be consistent across the board. And that may be a larger conversation with all of the properties in the city, sort of outside of the state wetland permit application. Which like, it's a valid point, but it's, you know, the DES isn't gonna review if a dog can get to the water.
Just asking you guys.
Yeah,
I-
so, and I think it's a good discussion. I think it might be worth having more globally with sort of each of the properties that are contributing to this path in the city, so that it's, once these sections start coming online, that there's sort of consistent rules for the entire greenway.
Yeah, I would imagine that each of the properties, the city has. Like,
Yeah.
generally similar. Except for each one, but yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. There's wayfinding signage here. I'm working on the 105 Bartlett Street project, which has already been through this process, and that has a section of this path. And then obviously the city's got the park they're working on just to the east of this, behind Vanguard and Barrio. And so this will connect to that.
What is the timeline for the phases
Of this one?
of that entire
Oh,
development? Just curious, I saw it way back a couple of years ago.
So this project, you know, based on, was it June now? I mean, this would probably be a fall start, maybe early next spring, so, you know, it's probably a couple years of construction. The city project, I'm not sure. And then Bartlett, similar, it's a 24-month construction schedule, starting probably later this year. So it won't be for a couple of years before this stuff's finished.
Thanks.
I had a question. It's just something I could ask for you to give an overview of how this project addresses vulnerability to sea level rise. I'm just looking at some of the other exhibits, and it's obviously gonna be impacted by that, and I don't, like, do you go beyond existing regulations to handle
So
floods, stormwater?
yeah.
I know there's a section of the application that speaks to coastal vulnerability, my God. So I don't know if you can address that probably better than I can.
I think for this proposal, it's important to note that we're not, we're entirely in the upland. So while sea level is rising, we're not changing the grade or the position of the bank that, if you were to think of it as like a spillway, that part's not going to change. The buffer itself, I think the enhanced vegetation will be favorable in terms of sea level rise. There's not really an advantageous area for marsh migration or anything because it is so elevated relative to the existing sea level. the reduction in impervious area in the buffer, the management of stormwater treatment, I think it all lends to keeping water off the site. But under these scenarios here, maybe Neil could talk about like the finished floor elevations and
Yes, so the finished floor. The mixed-use building has kind of varied finished floor elevations. The lowest of that is 13.6. The hotel building has a finished floor of 13.25, and those are 5+ feet above the current 100-year flood. Which is, so we're elevated up. I believe the ordinance is base flood +2, so we're above that. We are sort of constrained on going higher by the elevation of the road itself and being able to have access into the buildings from the sidewalk. But we are up 5+ feet above the current 100-year flood.
And does that go for the adjacent circulation areas too, that they're up that high too?
No, those are lower. Those are down 11 to 12 at an elevation 11 to 12. So again, 3+ feet above the current 100-year flood elevation. But primarily when we're looking at flooding elevations, we're looking at occupied spaces as opposed to like parking areas.
I can point out too that the plant list for the planting schedule has a mix of salt tolerant species too, so I think that that will be, able to adapt over time.
For discussion purposes, I will make a motion to recommend approval for the Rains Avenue, Maplewood Avenue. Use development.
Okay. Discussion.
I'll second that, but for the sake of discussion.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this is feasible or reasonable, but I'd like to include a condition that if or when those 3,000 feet of additional parking spaces are used, there would be an ask for the owner to purchase and put in conservation in perpetuity the same amount of land and the same type of land.
I mean, this is for the state, not for city, so. For this somewhere.
There would be no stipulation of like where, it would just be. For similar land.
I don't know,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
this is new, this is, I mean, it's not something we. Thought of to ask.
Hence, it's a discussion.
Yeah, that's where the discussion.
I don't think that's something that the state could enforce too, in terms of what
Yeah.
we're requesting here today.
Right, again. It's not in there. Preempted, I guess, where we have a little bit more like. Wiggle room. Okay, but I mean, I like where you're going.
If those parking spaces were to be necessary in the future, we would have to come up with the reason as to why the study and whatnot and present that to the planning board. Is there a requirement that we would ever come back to the Conservation Commission don't think so, but,
Sound like, so maybe we can be notified.
I think that's
so that's it, and that's, I think, the time that we might be able
Yeah,
to
to say something.
make some
Yeah.
statement like that.
But I think, sorry, I can't remember your name.
Neil.
You were saying that in this case, because it was already in there, typically didn't have to come back in front of the planning.
Typically you wouldn't, but based on the way that condition is written, it sounds like it'd be to the discretion of planning staff. On one, if we provide enough information to move forward, and then two, they could probably ask us to come back to either Conservation Commission or Planning Board. Again, is that the,
Yeah, I think you're right, in that it has to become impervious surface. That it will have to back.
Yeah.
Wetlands.
if city staff determines further review is needed, applicant will be referred to the Planning Board for further review. So
I think that would be
I think that covers the concern related to the future parking.
Notified when, if and when it's
Yeah.
going back there, so that we try to have some input, yeah.
that would be on the plan for their meeting, and everything, so members of the city would be notified.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to.
Okay, that's when it's coming through, yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to comment. Maybe it's just a form of written letter. Which decided on June 12th, 2024, that if this were to ever come up again.
Please notify us when we have some ideas. Yes, I think that would be good. Right now,
That's.
then it's on there. Well, it's they have to notify us.
So maybe that's a separate sort of other business item, because that can be
Yeah.
a business item attached to, yes.
No, I don't think this, yeah, I don't think it's and it's the spot for that. When this was a CUP, back in 2021 for us, and we ultimately denied it, it was 3-3, the motion failed, so it was a 3-3 vote. We did have a number of stipulations that I don't know if some of those should be attached to this DES permit. I didn't read what they are, we decided it makes sense not to put them on the permit.
Yeah, so we denied it, we had all these stipulations, and then I went to the planning board, and the planning board approved it with the stipulation.
Well, none of our stipulations showed up in their conditions. I don't know if they normally do, or I don't know, I haven't read many board minutes. So I don't know how our stipulations usually show up in their minutes. I didn't read, like, some of ours had to do with like no salt and de-icing material and like porous asphalt maintenance requirements, and I didn't see any of that in the planning board conditions.
Which is unusual. Usually.
Were those included in the plan, just in terms of the plan?
I don't know. I didn't go that.
So
You said there was, you said there were.
from the planning board approval. So we did, because the Conservation Commission didn't recommend approval, those recommended conditions also were not approved. However, we did address those conditions in the submission to the planning board. I don't recall all of them off the top of my head, so I can't say if we addressed every single one, but I know we addressed a number of them in the submission to the planning board. And I believe because of the fact that they were not, the conditions weren't passed through the planning board is why they're not on the planning board letter. But we had gone through and addressed a number of them. I think it was all of them, but I
And I can.
can't say that with certainty. Yeah, if you want, I can let.
So one is, it says relating to the porous asphalt maintenance requirement, monitor periodically to ensure the pavement surface drains effectively after storms, and if not, looking to replace the porous pavement.
Yeah, so the porous asphalt maintenance would have been included in the operation and maintenance plan. That's also something that the Wetlands Bureau asks about when they're reviewing these permits. The Green Street project, which we were here a couple months for, we got a comment asking about porous asphalt maintenance from DS. So yes, it's in the O&M, and they'll probably also ask us about it separately.
We had also asked that no salt and de-icing material shall be used in the 100-foot buffer, and that to be added to the O and M plan.
That's either in the O and M plan or we added a note to the site plan for that. But I don't, there was never an intent to, I don't believe, use any of that in the 100-foot buffer anyway, so that was. I think
Then you have add instructions for the 2+ year time span on eliminating mulching and maintenance to allow for natural growth and aesthetics on some of the planted islands. So I don't know if that's. That
I
natural woodland
don't-
area.
I don't recall that one. I
I feel
can't,
like what we wanted from that is. Just less maintenance probably in some of the beds, just less. Number 4 was add frequency of inspection of the jellyfish. That was something you had. Remember?
that again would have been in the O and M. I believe for those systems, it's quarterly for the first 2 years. And then based on what those first sort of inspections look like, you either continue quarterly if it's a heavy load site and they need that, or it gets reduced based on kind of what you see in those first quarterly inspections.
The next 2, store salt indoors, add the clause of sweeping of de-icing material after storm events to the general sweeping section of the O and M plan. It's kind of the same stuff as before.
Yeah,
And then the 7th one, which I don't think is applicable anymore, is restore the pier to something vegetative and porous and investigated in that stage, but that's not part of this.
that's not part of this application, yeah.
So it sounds like we don't need to add any additional stipulations. Those are kind of already covered. All right, where are we at?
I will just say that I did not recommend approval of this project last time, and I appreciate all your efforts around vegetating the buffer and managing the stormwater, but this feels like an incredibly dense project for this site, and I think it's gonna have tremendous impact just from people and yeah, I just have very big concerns about this project right at the end of the North Mill Pond, so I cannot support it this time either.
It's the people and the traffic that you're concerned about, or like the footprint that we're proposing is removed.
It's the people. I mean, that site is relatively quiet right now. I know there's a ton of asphalt. I know there are buildings there. I know the state of that. I site very well, but it's the amount of people and dogs and things that are just gonna be up on the edge of that pond and all the impact of that, whether it be foot traffic and just being there and just what's gonna end up in that pond, you know, with people there all the time and
Are you opposed?
and I
to
know
the
part of
green
that
lighting?
is the city green space, but I just 2 5-story buildings on that site that are gonna be lived in and accessed all the time feels like a very dense project and a lot of people to be in that space against that wetland.
But isn't it gonna have that traffic anyway because of the city plan? I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just.
No, because one of my arguments when it was a CUP was that I don't think it met for requirement number 2 of our statute. I think that they could have done something else that could have been a more modest project that wouldn't bring that people to that site on a regular basis.
Sorry, such as like a smaller commercial footprint or a completely different use?
Yeah, you know, like build 1 5-story building there and devote a whole lot more to green space and protecting that buffer and the water frontage and you know, build a park instead of a hotel, or I just think that there were other things that could have been done with that space instead of 2 significant buildings.
Or comments, anything else you wanna out there? Before we go to
I was just gonna say, not that it's totally relevant with the wetlands permit really in this case, especially after the CUP, but for future reference, the landscaping along the waterfront has, in the buffer, has proven in the past, not, that doesn't mean it's you guys or anybody in particular, but it just is so manicured still and maintained so intensely that, you know, great if somebody can come up with a really good way to do this and have it be, like you say, a natural woodland buffer that is maintained on a level that keeps it in natural woodland, rather than looking like it's somebody's front yard. And it's just, we're just seeing that all along this trail. But I know it's not really.
We could put a stipulation asking that everything in the water side of the trail be left alone once it's in the first.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the best way to go.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure. Somebody show that sometime. I'm not sure, like you say, mowing's probably better in some cases.
All right, are we ready for a vote? All in favor?
Oh, I don't feel like I like don't understand enough to vote.
You can recuse.
Can I?
Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? And one recusal. So what was that? 3, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1. 4, 2, 1. Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Where? All right, let's. Yeah, just want to make a motion that extend another 15 minutes. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Next on the agenda is 49 Mechanic Street.
Won't even be 15 minutes.
Hi, this is a much better day for those of us who are on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Still pouring water out of my shoes. So the question that you had asked me at the sidewalk was what the base was going to be. And I think I told you processed.
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Karen Bouffard, Representative, Wentworth Gardner. So it's 3/4 of an inch of processed gravel and a 1/2 inch of stone dust.
That's going under the patio and the walk.
And the walkway, yep.
This maybe was addressed the sidewalk and I wasn't there. So is it permeable? Is there enough like spacing between bricks to allow water to infiltrate?
It would be grouted, so the answer would be no there. Yeah, it would be pitched to go into the grass.
My understanding, reading it or and then looking at the sidewalk is that they did those drainage studies, permeation studies of the soil there to account for the additional
For it being,
impervious.
okay.
impervious.
Did you, I mean, I looked at them too, but
I'm
What was
interested
your
in exactly
conclusion?
how those are done, you know, I actually.
Well, I can tell you.
No, great to know.
A hole was dug to a certain depth. And then it was filled with water. And then it was measured at, in increments. I think it was, like a 5-minute mark, a 10-minute mark, 15-minute mark, that sort of thing. And it passed. I don't know what all those, were indicators of, but how fast the water was absorbed, I guess.
in the grass area.
Yes, yeah. How quickly the water in the hole disappeared.
Sure, there's some standard for that. Actually had that on the
Yeah.
list to look up.
Yeah.
That's
Wanted to sort of give a brief overview of the
Yes.
project.
Yes, I was just going to say that this was this project is something that the organization has talked about for a long time. Particularly the walkway, because it's uneven ground and the grass is wet oftentimes. And so when people are trying to traverse from the main house to the warehouse, it's somewhat dangerous. It's a little slippery when wet. So we always wanted to put the pathway. The patio was sort of a distant dream, but we received an LCHIP grant this year to replace the sills on the carriage house and do other improvements. And it is going to be an issue to replace the sill. There's going to be a grade change right outside of it, or we're going to bury the sill again, which why would we do it, right? It's just going to rot again. So that grade change is going to necessitate us doing something a little bit differently for access into the building. And that's how it made sense to do the patio now and connect it with the walkway.
Is that also the foundation work that?
The foundation work is on the north side and really is so insignificant. It's about a foot deep and it's as narrow as the narrowest excavating bucket. And again, that's just to get to the foundation. The stones in some places have rolled into a crawl space that is inaccessible. So we have to do it from the outside, because the state did tell me that it could be done from the inside without a permit. But of course, you have to be very small to be able to get in there and work on your belly. So this is the only way to do that. And unfortunately, this was all planned to be done and then when the patio and the walkway came in, that's when it really threw a wrench in the best laid plans. So we haven't been able to start the project at all. But they need to be done together.
A little bit of questions about patio. You had mentioned that the patio rate, it sounded like the grading wasn't going to change, but it kind of was going to change because you're gonna, right now, the way it is, you just kind of walk right into the back
Right.
barn. And
Yeah.
you're going to make it so it had to be a step up.
Yes, it is going to require that. I love the way it is right now. But the way it is right now is that we have a sill in the ground and it's rotted, and to replace that and then backfill it again is just going to rot it in. So there does have to be a grade change. I think what you might be referring to is I did say during the site walk regarding the patio that as it goes back, we were going to do the least amount of grading. So it's going to entail building a stone wall at the back so that we wouldn't, and it's also shifted on that first plan. We'd always talked about it being basically directly behind, but the area to the right of the patio on this plan would mean we would have to remove a lot of dirt because it is pitched quite a bit there. So by shifting it over towards the main house, we don't have to do that. So we're trying to disturb as little as possible.
Follow-up question to that is sort of erosion control measures during.
That stone wall. Oh, during construction, the typical fencing.
Oh, okay, is that in the, that must be.
I think so. I just saw something on the infiltration rate in there, so I think it tells you what it was. Yeah.
And then just as follow-up questions looking at that, is the pathway or the patio going to be used?
No,
So you won't be shoveling it?
no, no. Yeah, we're a seasonal operation, basically from May through the middle of October. So, yeah, we don't have any heat on the premises, so it's not used.
Well, like, this is done for the fact. Attachments, the last attachment is copy of mailing returns, so that's the last page that I received. So. Yes, I've gotten this. Yeah, this is initially, they, hopefully, yes. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
We've only got 15 minutes.
I know, I just need to remember the address and I'll make that motion. I will make a motion to recommend approval for the patio and walkway 49 Mechanic Street project.
Discussion? Or stipulation, I guess, do we want to just make sure that that sheet 3, do you ever see
Sheet 1, 2, and 3 are not interested.
I guess that just,
They get it.
they get it.
Let
somebody sees it.
Sure, it's sheet
Yeah,
2, 3 are.
yeah, and I think I see it and make sure that the
And
erosion
the-
control
The
measures.
city.
Good. All right, any discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor?
All right,
Thank you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you very much.
And we have any other business.
Sorry, who's second?
Balance.
On the business item. Making a motion to vote on. Getting a letter to the board about.
Oh, yeah, about the 18 reserved spaces. That we could list 18.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
If there are any important spaces that either. Conservation Commission is asked for the recommendation or.
yeah, we want to make a recommendation. It comes to anybody.
Yeah, then it comes back to us.
Yeah, can we have it come back to us like form the meeting?
I don't think so, I don't think that they, well, I guess planning board could request that they go through us first.
In our vote to. It's a program, so we
That's true.
provided our recommendations to.
Right.
Yeah.
Just effectively, so, you know, as long as we're notified, I think. Perhaps some sort of. Response.
Right, I'm just not sure we would have a meeting in between being notified and it going to planning board, so we would.
Probably do that in advance to some extent.
I mean, what do we want our letter to say?
Right, we would-
Because we could just have the letter now.
Exactly.
Fine.
There may be certain conditions if, you know, only 4 of those spots are, you know, required. But 18 are, so might be some variance in that letter. Presumably have our response to the request. We can work on that.
Stuart wants them to buy additional land, right? Is that what, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that's, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I feel like we might, there's like several
It's
avenues
a
we
clear
could
case
go
of
down, I don't know.
compensation for using that land. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna do that, then. Okay, then you have to find somewhere else and you have to put it in conservation. I'd like it in conservation opportunity so that it remains in that way.
Be land like that the city's been pursuing, but like, you know, we were talking about
And we have a conservation fund, you just want to pay some money, I mean,
Yeah.
Or conservation.
but I like, then what do you,
It's
what's the
better,
going rate for
You're gonna wanna,
parking
if
space?
you were gonna go that route, you want them in, probably within 100 foot buffer, it's very difficult to buy
Yeah.
a small parcel of land. I'm not sure that that's a avenue that would be
But-
reasonable, but like, I mean, I understand that the ask, but. you gotta think
Could it
about
be
Yeah, yeah.
like a value, for a certain value amount in conservation? then? That would actually facilitate.
Legally asking them to contribute to. Cause how do you value that section of spaces?
Well, there's a value to a parking space. Inherently in parts of the space. But it's not equal to what it's worth. I think. Conservation wise.
I mean, they also have these, they're using puzzle lifts, I don't know if anyone, I've never heard of those, but that's where they're getting 54 of their spaces, they're using these puzzle lifts, and planning board did say in their whole like minutes discussion that they would rather than try to fit in another puzzle lift, whatever these are, instead of using those reserve spaces. So I don't know if we could say like looking into like, I mean, that's an alternative.
can you explain?
I don't know what puzzle lift is, but it's, I mean, I'm just envisioning Tetris of cars, like going up an
Well, they
elevator.
do have those in Germany in the underground car parks where you drive in and then it lowers and there's a second car that can go. to the top.
That is what it is,
What is
because
it going down? Because they had
Goes
the
up,
underground.
it goes up or down, 198 is Lincoln, as
Yeah.
in. Because I looked to buy that.
Okay,
Oh, wow.
but they're getting 54 spaces out of, I don't know how many puzzle lifts this requires.
Yeah,
It's very neat.
It is kind of.
it's super smart, it's a great use of space.
So I don't, and the planning board had said like. This, we like this option better than
Yeah.
obviously those. Paving those other areas, so I don't know if we want that somewhere in our letter that like we have. That's what we support, but I don't know, once this is all built. I don't know if they're gonna have another. Puzzle.
So, could you have permeable parking spaces, you know, there's. Concrete blocks or cement blocks that are a shape where you can put dirt in them, and things can grow. Which makes it much less impactful,
So
so less the
the
grass.
walkways. Permeable, the thing is, the whole site is capped, so like it's not
Yeah. okay,
infiltrating
just
that
it's not-
much, it's just infiltrating the barrier and
Yeah.
then,
Then go into the.
Yeah.
To the water.
I don't know if that's that.
I mean, it's got stormwater collection systems on site, so all the runoff from.
Yeah, it'll just go back to.
So you probably
where
want
it's
to
going.
put that same system in place.
48 seconds.
We, I mean, we have some on the bus, I mean, they're not gonna use the reserve space
No, yeah.
until the thing's built, so do we wanna like maybe think about it and
Work on a letter.
reconvene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people have ideas, okay, alright, that's good, now, just make it over free, so that I don't, always figure out what we're gonna do.
No, that's like, that's the way to do it, because then I'll remember next month.
Yeah. Okay, that's good, any other business?
I was just gonna go out on a limb and say, my stray dog thing, there were some really good questions tonight that everybody asked, so it was really nice. Really on point.
Adjourn.
It's just across the pond from.
That's too much.
So, yeah.